Welcome to a Service Please Snack. Today, we're with Meriel, founder of Club Mexicana, the vegan Mexican restaurants all across London. There was a real brand identity straight away that came in, and it was really, really fascinating. But at that time, you know, were you like the token vegan within Curb and things like that? Like, how was that at that particular moment?
No, I think we were, and I think, I mean, like, hats off to Curb, and I remember Petra at the time being like, this vegan thing, like, we need someone in, and it wasn't in a tokenistic way. It was like, she knew that there needed to be like diversification of what was pretty much meat in a bun in various forms. So I think she was excited about what we could bring, and then, you know, I wouldn't say everybody, even within Curb, was convinced. I think they still thought we were just like the funny little vegan ones, and then putting us out on markets with people like you. And I think I remember seeing you guys before we started trading, and as with lots of other people in Granary Square, like, your setup was like, it was cool, but it was like, it was really minimal, and I really like that sort of style. But everybody's was quite like that in their own way. So like the OSB board with like black on it, and then we were like, okay, so we need to stand out as being totally different to that. So let's go with this kind of like 80s tropical. There is literally Club Tropicana playing it in our prep kitchen. We don't make them play that all the time. But yeah, so we were like, let's go bright pink, let's like go really colourful, you know, these sorts of colours in the background, and then we just were like, I suppose now I'd look at it from a design point of view and be like, it was kind of like, let's go for a maximal style, you know, like putting more and more into it, like pound shot flowers, like basically cover up any metal parts of the gazebo, any like exposed wood, that's not our style. Let's go like full colour and make ourselves look like this tropical oasis in the middle of Granary Square, in the middle of other traders with like bare wood and, you know, this kind of macho appeal. Because that is, we would like to attract an audience who don't really want that. They don't want like rough and ready burgers. They want something more colourful, like, you know, a bit lighter, a bit more, you know. I think we're just trying to showcase what the food was. And actually, we remember we pulled people in, they haven't even looked at the menu, and by the time they'd got the food, they were like, oh my god, is it vegan? And you're like, yep, okay, bye, thanks to have your money, thank you, bye. But, you know, that's kind of, I guess we sort of tricked people in a way. But yeah, and I remember all the other traders looking at us thinking we were absolutely bonkers, and it used to take us, I'd say, like an hour longer to set up because of all the like frilly little bits. That's and our little like glittery tablecloth, and, you know, we put like little sunglasses and stuff, like tropical sunglasses. I bought all this crap off eBay and whatever, and then it would take us another like 2 hours to take everything back down again. And everyone's like, I don't understand why you do this. And it was kind of like, well, yeah, because we need to, because we need to set ourselves apart. If we had just rocked up and done a similar sort of minimal thing and just written like vegan in big capital letters, we wouldn't have got any customers. That's very different now, but like, yeah. So that was why we did that.
Yeah.
And we did seem a bit bonkers, and everybody thought we were mad, but
yeah. You know. Well, I think that's why I alluded to, you know, the hanging of the things, because I was like, I can remember being like, right, we're really time pressed. We need to like set up, get everything done, and I just see you doing this, and I was like, what's going on here? But I loved it. I loved it. And I think you also just said, you know, about meat in the bun, and it really was at the top of the food chain at that particular point. And I think there were just iterations of that. You know, like you and me have even just had the conversation right now. It was like, to get into Curb, you know, I can remember looking through the trader list and being like, there's no one doing duck. So it's like, right, we need to do this and come up with a name for that. And it was just like, because it would be meat in a bun. And then, you know, we were able to propel ourselves on there. And I think at that particular point, it was you could see a roadmap or a path to be able to go from your street food store into maybe a bricks and mortar, or into pop-ups, or into that. And I'm intrigued, did it feel that there was that like ascendance and path for you at that particular point? Or could you imagine, or did you even envisage where it was going to go? Not really, no.
Like, I was really rubbish when people were like, oh, where do you see this going? Where do you see this business going? And like, to be honest, it really was at the very beginning an escape from my like job in advertising that I'd come to hate over the 10 years before, and just really, really, really wanting to do something in food, and really, really wanting to like showcase vegan food in London, because I'd come back from Australia where like veganism was like it was kind of like a cool normal thing in the dining scene, to back over here where like literally people were still laughing at me when I said I was vegan in a restaurant. So it was a bit of a weird thing where I did have a real like mission in my head that I wanted to like create great vegan food and show people that it was interesting and fun and exciting and could be just as good as like all the other food that was kind of happening in street food at the time. But I also never really had like a vision for it moving forwards. You know, we did a pop-up to start with, and then we got into Curb kind of off the back of that. The pop-up was super fun, and like I did it with my wife actually every Saturday night in a cafe in Hackney, and that felt like the biggest achievement at the time. I was just like, I just can't get any better than this. This is great. I'm loving it. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, I never really, it was, I guess it was like, and maybe this is the case for a lot of people in street food, that you take every little mini step at a time, and for me, I always have to approach like life and work a bit like that, because I get really out-faced otherwise. So it's like, okay, so now we've done a pop-up, I really wanted to get into Curb because I saw that they were doing like really exciting food things. I pestered Petra until we got a meeting with her, and then we were able to go into her office and like cook some food. And then once we were in Curb, I was like, okay, we got one market a month or something, or one market a week. I mean, this is kind of 101 for like how it goes with Curb and street food, I think. And then it's like, right, okay, now we've got one a week with Curb. Okay, so now we want to get into Street Feast. So like talk to Street Feast, I got into some kind of like trader day that they were running through a back door, not literally through a back door, but like, you know, on the invite of somebody else who had been invited. And then it was like, I suppose it was just like, right, we need to build up into like doing as many street food events and markets as possible, and then see what happens with that. And then I think you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, so what am I doing next? Okay, festivals, that's a good one. So let's do festivals. Let's do the biggest and best festivals. And then after that, it's like, what's next? And I think the difficult thing for me at the time was just, it seemed ridiculous to think that we could have a restaurant. And I was always quite shy or embarrassed to say like, yeah, that's what I want, because it did seem crazy, because there wasn't any other like 100% vegan restaurants. There was vegetarian restaurants, like people like Mildred's and stuff, who I think are now fully vegan, but yeah, they were vegetarian at the time, but there wasn't anything fully vegan, let alone something that was vegan and Mexican, like sort of niche within a niche. So I could see how veganism was snowballing, and how like so many people kept on coming back, saying how much they enjoyed it, more people bringing friends, people being like, oh, I'm trying to eat vegan like 2 or 3 times a week, or I just love eating vegan for lunch. And you know, it's just this constant sort of positive reinforcement. And then literally like people's mums being like, oh, I try and give everybody a vegan meal, like, you know, in my house. And suddenly it's like, hang on, this is getting really mainstream now. And then I think there was just obviously like some kind of tipping point where I was like, yeah, this actually could be a thing. And actually I think we could, you know, everyone in street food always talked about bricks and mortar, and you know, that's the ultimate goal. And there was a point where some people were thinking like, actually I don't want bricks and mortar, because it's quite like, it sort of constrains you, and you've got to, you know, pay rent and get all these staff and everything. And I was a bit like, yeah, maybe that's right. And then I was like, no, actually, I really enjoy that, and I really enjoy growing a business. And I remember seeing Zan from Brickenburger talking about that, and she was like, yeah, there's a point at which you can't do that much more to your food. Like, you can't keep on changing your food all the time. Like, it will completely wear you out. And if you enjoy growing the business and growing a team and growing something that you really believe in, then getting bricks and mortar is the ultimate thing for that. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. So that's how sort of I ended up deciding that was the path. But it took a long time. You know, we were going like 7 years before we opened Kingley Court. So we didn't do it like massively quickly.
Thanks for listening to that Service Please snack. Please like, share, comment, do whatever you feel is necessary. It means a lot. Till next time, service please with Josh Patterson.